Hey guys, welcome to my how to complete the square tutorial. It's my first time making a tutorial, so we'll see how it goes. I've got this little thing here to help me along the way. Alright, some basic things you need to know. The reason we're doing this is we're trying to find the solutions of a quadratic. Remember, there's usually going to be two. I like to complete the square when a is 1 and b is even, and you'll see why that makes more sense later. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go through the steps. Basically, we're going to solve this quadratic function in standard form by completing the square. So the first thing you need to do is get rid of a. So to get rid of a, we're going to divide it to all the terms. So here you can see me dividing by 2, dividing by 2, dividing by 2. Over here it just becomes 0, so it's nothing. So then we're left with x squared plus 4x minus 9. Alright, next step. Now we're just going to move the c over to the right side. So we're going to do that by adding 9, which cancels it on this side. And this is good completing the square form. Okay. Now, we're going to make a perfect square on both sides. And we're going to make a perfect square and add it to both sides. So, as you can see, I added this perfect square of 4 to both sides. Now you're probably wondering where the heck that 4 came from. Well, here's what I did. You take this b and you divide it by 2. Okay, so I get 2. Then you square that 2. You can see me doing this down here, which is 4. So that's why I got 4. So let's say we had 10x. You would then add 25 because you would take 10 divided by 2, which is 5, and then 5 squared is 25. So one more bonus one here. If I had 14x, okay, let's say we had negative 14x. I would divide this by 2. I would get negative 7. Negative 7 squared is going to be 49. Sorry, my writing's not that great. So I would add 49 to both sides. Now, we are going to factor this perfect square down to this form. Okay, so x squared plus 4x plus 4 can be more simplified as x plus 2, the quantity squared. Over here, this was pretty self-explanatory. I just added 9 plus 4. So let's go back to this side up here because you're probably wondering where I did that. We know just a normal factoring problem. What two numbers multiply to give you this, add to give you this. So 2 times 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4. So we would do x plus 2, x plus 2. Well, this is why it's a perfect square, because they're both the exact same. So instead of writing it out like this, I can put it in this form, x plus 2 quantity squared. Okay? An easy way to do this is just you basically just take b and put the half of it right there with the x and then squared. This is always going to be the same. You're always going to have this x, that's an x, yep. This will always be the same. This number will change depending on what b is. This sign will change depending on what this sign is. So, down here, if we had x squared minus 10x plus 25, you take half of negative 10, so it's negative 5. Okay? Then you're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't mind my little radical signs. Had to make them myself on a computer. When you take the square root of a square, that's opposite. So that's going to cancel with this, therefore freeing this part of the equation. When you take the square root over here, you have to include plus or minus. Okay? So square root equals plus or minus. Okay? You have to remember that. This is where we're going to get those two solutions. Okay? So far, so good. Finally, we just have to get rid of this 2. So we're going to move it over. We're going to subtract 2 to both sides, getting rid of it on this side. X is now finally by itself. You don't have to simplify the square root of 13. There is no perfect square root of 13, so you can just leave it under the radical. So your two solutions would be negative 2 plus the square root of 13 and negative 2 minus the square root of 13. You are done. There's an extra smiley for you. Now, I will do one more for fun because I know there's some ugly ones in this section. Okay. Following the same rules. Step 1, get rid of a. A is 1, I'm okay. Step 2, move c over. We've already done that. So now it's time for me to add my perfect square. Oh, this is going to be fun because this is a case where b is not even. It's okay. We can still do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite this here for you guys. I'm going to take half of b, which is 1, and divide. So half of 1 is 1/2. And then I'm going to have to take 1/2 and square it. So 1/2 squared is 1/4. So the perfect square that I'm adding is 1/4. Do it to both sides. So I got this because I took 1, divided it by 2, was 1/2, squared that, and got 1/4. And just so you know, just 1/2 squared, you square the top, square the bottom, is 1/4. I know fractions aren't always everyone's favorite. Okay, so now we just have to write it in that format here. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this up. I always do that every time. I just have to put whatever half of 1 is. So keep the plus sign the same. I'm just going to put plus 1/2 there. Nothing big. Over here, adding fractions, keep the denominator. Add the numerator. I get 20/4. Oh, but I know that 20/4 is 5. Hey, we're getting rid of some of those fractions now. So x plus, I apologize again for this handwriting. There we go. Square root equals plus or minus. I used to have this little song, square root equals plus or minus to row, row, row your boat, because everybody forgets it. So square root equals plus or minus. If you're still listening to this video, you probably think I'm crazy. It's okay. So we got square root of 5. Can't simplify that. Let's just leave it like that. X plus 1/2 is now free because the square and the square root cancel. We're going to subtract 1/2 to both sides. Subtract 1/2. Oh, goodness. I think we can fit it on here. So my two answers are -1/2 plus and minus the square root of 5. See? That wasn't that bad either. Hope this was helpful.